What's up guys, I'm Mr. Audio, and if you're new here on this channel we talk about music production, sound design, mixing, mastering, and pretty much anything to get your tracks ready for release. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss a video. Let's get into it. On today's video, we're going to discuss how I made these drums sound like this. Alright, so there's a lot going on there, and we're going to go over it step by step. This is going to be more of a walkthrough video to show you kind of how I decided I was going to process these drums. So let me give a little bit backstory. So I'm a mix engineer, mastering engineer, vocal processing engineer. I do it all, pretty much. And I got a bunch of clients that I work with on a regular basis. Now, one of these clients decided they were going to get a brand new MIDI drum kit to have better samples, better triggerings, just a nicer drum kit all around. And the samples that came in the module itself actually sounded really good. So we messed around with it in his studio for a little bit, and he said he really wanted to use those samples specifically for this track. And I said, cool, fun challenge, let's try it. So I asked if there's any way he could separate the cymbals from the rest of the drums. And he said, oh yeah, it's a stereo output. I can pan the cymbals all left and the drums all right and give you two mono inputs. Boom. Right there, I've got two separate mono tracks. Now I can process them differently. Now, what I did specifically is I made a bunch of copies of the drums and two copies of the cymbals. Now, the copies of the drums were meant to accent different parts, because Nate is a good drummer. He's a drummer of this band, and I wanted to keep all his articulations. I didn't want to just get some samples from the kid and try to program his amazing drum skills in. It's just not going to translate well. It's not going to come over well either. These drum triggers are very, very nice. I wanted to see if we could just capture it. So work with what you got. I mean, there's probably a better way to do this, but I wanted to try it this way for this challenge. And to be honest with you, I think I did an amazing job. And let's go over each individual track and show you what it makes up. Okay, so for this part that's pretty much heavy snare, heavy snare and cymbal. All right, so let's listen to the first track here. What's going on is I'm squashing it with the glue compressor after EQing it, bringing up some transients, it looks like. All right, making the snare sound more tinny. And then I have this guy right here adding some sub and some top end. I did attempt to use this assistant here with the drums setting on it, and it did a pretty dang good job, I would say. And I did mess around with some settings. I'm not sure exactly which ones now. These I turned off, I think. And yeah, let's give this a listen now. We'll bypass it. A lot of bass and a lot of top end, but nothing in the middle. But the middle is kind of being carried by the previous track here. So look at these two together. It's kind of lost without the cymbals, isn't it? Well, let's add them in here in a minute. All right, now let's move on to the next track. And this one is adding more grit, some distortion to the top end, and overall body. Let's look at what the EQ is doing. Yeah, overall body, some top end, take some harshness away. Nothing doing the low end there, and just a bunch of saturation happening here with EQ emphasis and de-emphasis. If you want to see what this is actually doing here, so whatever EQ amount I'm adding here, it's hitting the saturator first, and it's saturating those parts, and then I'm cutting that out, so what I'm left with is the saturation. It's called EQ emphasis and de-emphasis. It's a trick I use quite often. So moving on, let's see what those 3 tracks sound like together. Wow, that's starting to sound like a real kit. All right, now let's solo out this next track and see what it's doing. A little bit more distortion now. Let's see what the EQ is doing. Okay, I'm obviously boosting something right here. Let's see what it is. It looks like I'm trying to accent the top end of the kick and the snare. They're in similar area right there, and it looks like it's doing a pretty good job. Did some automating here, obviously, and then got some more distortion going on here. Let's see. Okay, another top end distortion. So really I'm just adding distortion on the top end, just saturating it, and then I'm EQing the bottom end out of this, and a lot of the top end, it looks like. And see what the compressor's doing. Not a lot. And obviously very targeted saturation here. Okay, so let's see what all 4 of those tracks sound like now together. Okay, now we get to the toms. This is where it gets really interesting. Okay, so what I do is I just took that whole clip and I just brought it to another track. Any part that was tom heavy in performance, I brought to another track, and I EQ'd pretty much everything out except for the tom and the snare. I couldn't really separate the snare from the toms, but it's kind of a good thing, and you'll see why in a minute. Okay, so this is what that sounds like by itself. But then I would take it a step further and I would convert to new MIDI track, the drums, all right? And it would convert it to some weird drum track here. Let's just do it so you can see what I'm talking about. So it would convert it to this weird 50 drum kit thing, and it would sound crappy. So this hi-hat here is what the snare is being detected as, and then I got it to sound kind of like how I wanted it to with the toms, but the drum samples still weren't there, so I changed it to this kit, and then I went through each hit individually, and then, so this is what the drums all sound like together after all that processing. Well, let's see what's on the processing of the MIDI part here, too. Okay, so I didn't really do much processing. I threw it into a limiter. That's about it, to accent the top end, to really wisp up the top end and distort it a little bit. Now that's starting to really fill out. Okay, so now we're on to the cymbals. Let's get a really cymbal heavy part here, and as you can see, this gets pretty interesting here. So this is done with a gate. So what I did here is I panned the first track of cymbals just a little bit to the left. So kind of would be sitting right where the hi-hat would be if you panned it drummer's perspective. And then, so the cymbal, the crash cymbal right here, is still kind of in that area too. So that kind of takes care of both of those problems. Now we need the right-hand crash to be hitting on the right. So knowing that Nate is right-handed and he's going to hit this cymbal a little bit harder than he hits this cymbal with the left hand. So when he's really cymbal heavy, I was able to, you know, well, they sound different too. So I was able to just kind of solo out which cymbals sounded different and kind of get a feel for, okay, this one needs to be over on the left, this one needs to be over on the right. And I kind of did a bunch of automation down here to get it to sound like this. So what we got going on here is a gate. Okay, so real quick here, what this effect rack is doing is it's a parallel chain, a limiter. I'm just really distorting the crap out of it. Just sounds like crap by itself. But what it's doing is it's giving me a lot more top end. It's adding some distortion, if you will. I'm using it to add some distortion. And then this is the dry track. So then together they sound like this. And that's pretty cool. So I did that for both of these tracks, and then for this gate here, I'm automating a few things. I'm automating the return on one specific part because I needed it to cut out on the right side and go back to the left side because there was some hi-hat action that I wanted on the left side primarily. So I raised the return right there. But all of this is done so that I can get the right cymbal on the right and the left cymbal on the left. So all of these ups are me trying to get the left cymbal back to the left side, and all of these downs are me trying to get the right cymbal on the right side because it was detecting on the left side. So all this automation here was kind of necessary. So let's just solo out this part here with just the drums, and let's just do the final version of it. Let's just see what it sounds like. Let's just listen to a before and after. All right, so you get a really big picture of what you can do with even just 2 mono tracks. All right, so here's before, and I'll switch in the middle, and you'll just automatically hear the difference. Before. As you can see, there's a lot more side information on the after. As you can see, it's just night and day difference. And this is just done with 2 mono tracks, just separated out on the MIDI drum kit level. Now I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but this is a fun challenge, and I thought it'd be some good content for you guys to be creative with your mixing decisions. Limitations can make you do crazy things that sound amazing, like this. All right, that's it for this video, guys. If you stuck around the end and you're an Ableton user, there's some free stuff with links in the description. There's also some paid products on my website. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Mr. Audio, out.